Isaiah 42, right off the bat, starts this way. Behold my servant, or another translation says, here is my servant, whom I uphold. Now, when the Lord says, behold, or here is my servant, what he's saying is, look at my servant. Examine my servant. Look at him. Who do you think is talking about here? My chosen one in whom I delight. I will put my spirit on him, and he will bring justice to the nations. He will not shout or cry out, or raise his voice in the streets. A bruised reed he will not break, a smoldering wick he will not snuff out. In faithfulness he will bring forth justice. He will not falter or be discouraged till he establishes justice on earth. In his teachings, the islands will put their hope. If this sounds familiar to you, it is because you've read it in the book of book of Matthew. Matthew, the gospel writer, has taken this entire passage that we just read from Isaiah and applied it this way. Matthew chapter 12. I'm going to start reading from verse 15. Aware of this, Jesus withdrew from that place. A large crowd followed him, and he healed all who were ill. He warned them not to tell others about him. And this was to fulfill what was spoken through the prophet Isaiah. Here is my servant, behold my servant, whom I have chosen, the one I love, in whom I delight. I will put my spirit on him. He will proclaim justice to the nations. He will not quarrel or cry out. No one will hear his voice in the streets. A bruised reed he will not break, a smoldering wick he will not snuff out, till he has brought justice through to victory. In his name the nations will put their hope. Isaiah is saying this servant that God was talking about 750 years before Matthew saying rather, is Jesus himself. And then when we go back to Isaiah, when God says, look at my servant, he is telling us to examine him. Look at his characteristics, his attributes of sort. How will we recognize this servant when he comes? We are given certain clues. Well, first, the word servant. Let's start there. Jesus called himself the servant. The idea of a servant is one of the main themes in Christianity. In Matthew 20, verse 25 to 28, this is Jesus calling his disciples and saying, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. But not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to be great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom to many. The greatest among you will be your servant. Mark 9, sitting down, Jesus called the 12 and said, anyone who wants to be first must be very last and servant to all. Mark 10, not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first among you must be slave of all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. Now, why did I go through this idea of servanthood that Jesus was talking about himself? But it's not only about himself. He was saying this to his disciples. So the idea of serving, this characteristic of servanthood, the one that God said about Jesus, that you will recognize my servant from his attitude and the fact that he is also a servant, comes all the way down to us today. Because as he was telling his disciples, he's also telling us. As he is telling his followers, he's telling us, isn't he? We are Christians, aren't we? Christian means a person who follows Christ, who follows Jesus. We are his followers, we are his disciples. So if our master is a servant, so should we be. And remember, he made a very important point that's really counterculture today. Whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. See, in God's economy, greatness, being first, having a place of high honor, is not like the understanding of the world's categories of being first and having a place of high honor. That's why he told his disciples, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. In the world, what we see is people exercising their powers, proving that they're large and in charge and they're number one. And we grow up in a school system and a work environment and the world system that pushes this ideology, this way of thinking, into our minds. And there is this attitude of almost a superiority rather than humility that needs to be present in the Christian. That attitude of superiority exists in the world, but we are called out of the world. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to be great among you must be your servant. Greatness in God's economy comes through servanthood. Remember, Jesus displayed this many times, guys. The night that he was arrested, him washing the disciples' feet, apostles' feet. As you remember, that was a very lowly uh, person's job. It's like if you had nothing to offer in the way of a service to anybody, that's what you did. You washed people's feet. That was like the lowest of the lowest of the lowest category that you could be. Jesus being God, at the very least, in their understanding at that moment in history, their Lord, and they knew him to be Messiah, did that. That's who we follow. What should be our attitude? You know, we're all trying hard to achieve certain things. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with trying to be the best at what you do and working on it and practicing it, as it were, honing your skill. Nothing wrong with that. But the attitude in which that must be done is 100% counterculture to the world. And that's the difference between a true believer and an unbeliever. You heard me say many times God cares more about why we do first and then what we do. Our motivation, why we do what we do, is more important than what we do. In other words, if we do the wrong thing, sorry, if we do the right thing with the wrong reason, that has no value in front of the Lord. And the only thing that's going to matter in eternity is what we do for the Lord, what we do in His will. The problem we have is we're surrounded by the world and we only see standards of the world, achievements of the world, categories of the world, and we're because of our flesh and because of our environment, we're also uh, predisposed to categorize success according to the world standards. So Jesus himself is demolishing that standard. He's saying that's not the standard. That's not the standard that counts. The standard that counts is one of humility and serving. Now, we are all called into different positions in life. Within our family, if you're working within your employment, we're all serving in some capacity. Our our attitude is what should be different than the world within those capacities. When we say servant, I'm not saying that everybody should quit their job and get a kind of a service job or just go serve somewhere else. That's not the point. It's one of attitude. As we keep reading, you will see. Look, he says over here, he will not shout or cry out or raise his voice in the streets. Now he's Isaiah, also Matthew, is describing this servant. That's Jesus to come. And he says, he shall not cry out or raise his voice in the streets. A bruised reed he will not break, a smoldering wick he will not snuff out. Well, that is an insight into his character and God's expectation of his servant. Not only Jesus, but also us, right? So, what are we talking about here when he says he will not shout out or raise his voice in the streets? Jesus never seeked to be recognized. Do you remember that? Many times they wanted to grab him and make him king. He said no. Perfect example, a clue, as it were, to understanding how low profile Jesus was is this. Think of the night that he was arrested. Judas had to give the soldiers a signal as to who Jesus was. Judas said, he said, whoever I go and kiss, he is the one you should arrest. He is Jesus. In other words, according to some scholars, there was anywhere from 200 to 400 people there trying to arrest him. You're telling me that these 2 to 400 people that were there did not know who Jesus was? This person who's raised the dead by now, a few times that we know at least, hundreds, maybe undoubtedly thousands of people healed from all kinds of illnesses. And interestingly, remember when we read in Matthew 12, what did he say? He was with his disciples, many people were coming to him, and he was healing them all. All, not some, all. I mean, just in one city, hundreds of people came to him. So you're telling me thousands of people healed by the hand of Jesus. They didn't know who he was. He was preaching and teaching. for 3 years straight, and they didn't know who he was. That's a clue as to how much glory Jesus was seeking. He wasn't. He wasn't trying to be a center of attention. He wasn't looking for accolades. He wasn't looking to be in the spotlight. He didn't want to be known as this person under the spotlight. Oh, look at this person who's singing for the Lord. Oh, look at him how he's serving. Look at him how he's doing all this and that for the Lord. He wasn't seeking any of that. And we're going to read in Isaiah, I think it's 53. He was just an average looking person. There was nothing special about him. And he didn't try to look or act special. He just served his father. He just served Father God because that's why he was sent. What did he say? Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. That was it. So, same applies to us. When we're doing our thing, even when we're serving the Lord in some capacity, in our Christian walk, we are all serving the Lord in some way. Or we're in our work, in our school. What is our attitude? Is it one of humility? Is it one of understanding who we are? Is it one of understanding and knowing that anything that we are able to do is a gift from the Lord and appreciating it and using it, but not bragging about it, not gloating it over other people, just humbly doing what the Lord asked us to do. As you know, God has called us. If He's given us gifts and abilities, we are to work on them, get it better and better, and we should try to be the best that we can be within our calling. That goes without saying. But the attitude in which that is done is what we're talking about here. A servant of the Lord. And a bruised reed he will not break, and a smoldering wick he will not snuff out. Reeds, I don't know if you know what reeds are. Those are they they grow up in like marshes. If you drive on Garden State Parkway, you will see a bunch of these like tall grass-like things. Those are reeds, and they're kind of like almost skinny bamboo bushes, sort of. And in some countries, they used to make a little flutes out of them. It's ancestor to the thing that we call duduk in Armenia. Anyway, so if that thing is broken or bruised, it's useless. What people would do, there's nothing you could do with it, and you would just break it and burn it. That's what you would do. But look at the characteristics of Jesus. Even if a reed is bruised, he will not break it. Or a smoldering wick. I mean, they didn't have electric in that day, but if you have candles, if you ever seen candles come to the end of the wick where there's nothing left, it's just sputtering, it's just smoking and sputtering, and it's not making any light, it's not good for anything. You would just blow it out or just touch it and it would just snuff out, right? He would not even do that. What is this characteristic? How many people came to him? The woman that was caught in the act of adultery. What did he do? Woman at the well. How did he handle her? Other people. What did he say to them? He was gentle with them. He wasn't being what's the word I'm looking for? He wasn't being this super judgmental, harsh lawgiver. He was gentle with them. He showed them the right way, but he was gentle with them. So should we be as his followers. We should be gentle. We should not be condemning people. We shouldn't be harsh in our judgments. There has to be a spirit of humility and all with the idea of, I am here to serve the Lord, and I serve the Lord through my gifting and serving others. So, this is just a glimpse of what God wanted us to see about his servant, whom we read was Jesus in the book of Matthew, Gospel of Matthew. And then Isaiah continues in the chapter. He says, sing to the Lord a new song, his praise from the end of the world. I am the Lord, and this is my name, and I will not yield my glory to another, and my praise to idols. See, the former things have taken place, and new things I declare. Before they springing into being, I announce it to you. God is saying, I'm doing new things. Be aware of it. He was telling through Isaiah about how Jesus was going to come and how things are going to be different. He's saying, be aware of it. Things are going to change. He's talking about Jesus here. It will not be what you expect it to be. Be aware of it. I'm doing a new thing, he's saying. And then the chapter continues with God trying to explain to people who follow idols that they are nothing and they can do nothing. They're worthless. But those who trust in the idols, who say to images, you are our gods, will be turned back in utter shame. And then he takes his attention and puts it to who Isaiah was talking about in that day. That's Judah. And because of their unwillingness to follow the Lord, because of their rebellion against the Lord, because of their desire and their history of following and worshiping idols. And God did tell them that, look, you will be plundered, you will be punished, there will be war. And 150 years from that point, that's exactly what happened. They were taken captive and taken to Babylon. The whole country was lost because they did not follow the Lord. They did not do things his way. Yes, there was a form of godliness about them. They went to the temple. They did they had the sacrifices. They had the ritual ceremonies, and all those things was done. The feasts, the festivals, and all that stuff. But they were idol worshippers. They weren't truly following the Lord. They were following customs and traditions, but their heart was in idols, idols of their creation, idols of the world. So, this is a very important point for us. It is possible to fool oneself, to think that they're being religious, but at the same time, not following the Lord. So that's why it's wise to always judge our motives. Why am I doing what I'm doing? Why am I acting this way? Why am I thinking this way? Even when we do something for the Lord, even when we're serving Him in any kind of a category, question your motives. Am I doing this for recognition? Do I want the spotlight? Let people see or let people say, is that what's motivating you? Or is it beyond the people seeing? When it becomes beyond people knowing or seeing or saying, when it becomes beyond that and comes to, I'm doing this for the Lord, and there is no other motivation. I'm doing this because this is my calling. I'm doing this because this is my gifting. I'm doing this. This is what a believer does. I'm doing this because this is what the Lord wants from me. I'm doing this because this is the Lord's will for me. And when that, guys, becomes the motivation and the drive, you're at the center of God's will, and that's the safest place to be. All right, let's stop here. And if you have any questions, let's talk.